Okay, we got Ralph Sutton here. Ralph, thanks for joining us on the show.
No worries, man. Thanks for having me.
Hello?
How to be Tom Shillue. Starring Tom Shillue. You know, not everybody wants to be Tom Shillue. But for those people who do, I guess this podcast is for them. I mean, you got to model yourself after someone, right? Might as well be me, Tom Shillue. You had to go a little early today because usually I record in the afternoon. You I got to go earlier because you got something busy. What's happening?
You know, there's a lot of stupid things going on. We run, I'm part of Gas Digital, and we have a big meeting regarding the platform upgrade, and I just could not move it. And there were just too many pieces. There's like 6 different companies that all had one time frame that was working. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to be the only jackass that can't do it. So I decided to see if you could go a little early.
Absolutely. That's good. Okay, so this is a great jumping off point. Ralph Sutton is not just part of Gas Digital, you are the co-founder of it. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm the S in Gas Digital. Gas stands for Gomez and Sutton, and also allows for silly play on words like fuel up and high octane entertainment, all that dumb shit. But it came from the idea when Lewis and I were trying to come up with a name for the company. As a joke, I said we should call it Lars, Lewis and Ralph Studio, just like as a tribute to Metallica, something stupid.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, well, Gas makes sense, Gomez and Sutton. I'm like, yeah, that's better than SAG, so we'll do it. And that's how it started.
Okay, so let's go to the start, and we don't have to go back to the super origin story. Louis J. Gomez, a comedian. Were you a comedian?
No, I came from radio. I did radio for a long time. I had a show that was on about 100 stations around the country. That led to me being on like MTV and VH1 as a host and hosting festivals like Shiprocked and the M3 Fest and the Sturgis Rally and all shit like that.
That's interesting. I knew there was something with the voice because you have a good radio voice, and I was wondering if you just kind of like made it up when you went into podcasting or...
Oh, no, I always had this stupid voice. Even as a kid, I always... I would hear it probably from when my voice started to change. I guess, when is that, 13? When does your voice change? 15?
Yeah.
Whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah, sometime in junior high.
Yeah, and people, every time I would make a call to anything, someone would say, oh, man, you have a great voice for radio. And it kind of stimulated me to want to get into radio at a very early age. I did college radio for a hot minute, decided I didn't like it because I didn't get to pick my own music.
Yeah.
And then I was a strip club DJ because I had that voice as well. And at some point along the way, I got an audition at a radio station, and I was doing overnights, midnight to 6, that eventually led to me having my own syndicated national show.
Wow. Okay, so strip club DJ, did you bring them out like
the whole stupid thing? Yeah.
You did. So you would would you sometimes announce their credits? Like you'd say, "Oh, she was in Swamp Thing," or whatever.
So there was the Holy Grail Club. We're going back into the early '90s. Was a club called Pure Platinum, and it was in New York City. Pure Platinum at Stringfellows. Stringfellows was a legendary nightclub. They morphed into the strip club. And they had these really specific rules, not just for the dancers, but also for the DJs. The dancers had to change costumes like 2 to 3 times a night. They had to have 2 or 3 accessories with each outfit. Well, like, whatever their evening gown look was going to be, they had to change. They couldn't wear the same thing every night. And you had to either have gloves or a hat or a garter belt. Like you had to have extra. It couldn't just be the dress. And for the DJ, there were very specific rules with how you could talk, how long you could talk, and then every girl that you introduced always had to have 2 credits. And sometimes they didn't, or you'd forget, so you'd make up, she's a fucking lion tamer or whatever, just to keep that going.
Yeah, it's great.
Crazy.
We do that in stand-up as well. We just say, oh, and he's appeared on the, you just add, you'll say, Conan O'Brien. You assume he must have gone on Conan at some point,
At some point, yeah. It was crazy. But it was really weird, though, because we had to do this stupid thing. It was called Uptime, and it was a full dress introduction where there'd be 100 girls on stage, and we did it every day at 5 o'clock when the main room opened. And I had to look in a mirror, see the next girl from the mirror reflection, say her name, where she's from, 2 credits. And most of the girls were too stupid, no offense, to not realize if I got something wrong, just pretend and get the fuck off, Instead, they would turn around from stage and start yelling at you. It was crazy. It was really crazy.
So, okay, back to origin story. You and Louis J. Gomez, you have your meeting. So I'm assuming there was a podcast already. There was something, maybe was Legion of Skanks around at the time?
Legion of Skanks existed, and my radio show existed. And then I became friendly with Big J. Okerson, who's the one of the 3 of Legion of Skanks. And on Shiprocked one year, they asked me if I knew any rock and roll-y comedians. And I said, well, I know a guy that would be great. It was Big J. Got him to be one of the comics on one of the voyages. It was the 3rd or 4th year. And they ended up having us host a couple of events together. And we just made each other laugh the whole time. Yeah. And he said, I've been doing this podcast for a couple of years called Legion of Skanks. It's starting to get some traction. Maybe you and I would do a podcast. And my jerk-off douchebag response was, podcasting is for people that can't do radio. I'm doing radio, so thank you, but no thank you. And then a year goes by, and in that year, I hear all about how podcasting was changing the world. This is about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that next Shiprocked, I said, I would be very interested in doing that podcast with you if you're still interested. He said yes, and that's when my podcast, Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, the SDR show, was born. And that's where I met Louis and met Dave and met them. And so Legion of Skanks and SDR lived as separate entities for a while. And Louis had his other show called Real Ass Podcast. And we just would trade ideas. Like, hey, this works for me. This works for me. It was 10 years ago. There wasn't as much information online about podcasting. And we were going to open up a podcasting comedy club together. That was the idea originally. Yeah. But we couldn't find a space that wasn't $1 billion. This room that I'm in now used to be set up as a studio for my radio show. So I just offered the idea, why don't you start recording your show here? We'll start a little network here. And it was the same idea of my podcast, of my radio show. My radio show was on 100 small stations. You put 100 stations together, you had 500,000 people listening every weekend. So let's get a few small podcasts together, and then we could sell it as a package. And I was selling it ancillarily to my radio show. So if they were advertising on my radio show, I would say, hey, give us a few extra dollars, and we'll put you on this podcast network. And that's how it was started.
And so your radio show was yours to control? You could take advertisers?
Tom, it was a very unique idea. It was, I was completely the only, I don't know if any other shows follow this format, but I was owned, operated, programmed by me. We were on all different types of stations around the country, whether it was Cumulus or now what is Live Nation or all these other. My show was an independent show on 100 different stations around the country, and I got to pick the music every week, worked with advertising companies, and I did everything on my own. It was a very unique situation.
But how did you get into that unique situation? You must have been working for some other operation, right?
It started with, I started at a small little station in New Jersey called WNNJ. It still exists. Then I moved to WDHA in New Jersey, which also still exists, was a big rock station. And I saw discarded, syndicated attempts to get on DHA, like packages around DHA. So I just mocked that and sent it out to all the companies that had sent submissions to DHA for their show. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I did that. One of those networks picked us up. And the weirdest thing happened was the first 6 months, we were syndicatable, but we weren't syndicated. Why? Who the fuck am I? No one knew me. I got a stupid show in New Jersey that plays rock. No one gave a shit, Yeah. So I said, but we're a good show. We're getting good guests. This is weird. So I talked to my co-host at the time. After the show on a Saturday night, we drove to Miami. All the way down, we're just listening to the radio. If they were playing Guns N' Roses, playing Kiss, playing Van Halen, we'd write down the call letters. And we got to Miami, and we just started making phone calls to about 50, 60 stations. And then we made 10 meetings and then came back, snaggled our way back up the East Coast, and we signed 6 stations in a week just by going there and talking to them. And I came back to this company. I'm like, you guys are this big company. We've been with you for 6 months. You've not signed a single station. Yeah. And I got 6 pretty decent markets. It was Charleston, South Carolina, somewhere in Virginia, somewhere in Georgia, like real like markets in a week. And I said, well, we came back just in time to do the next Saturday show. We were gone for a week. And I said, what the fuck are you guys doing for us? Like, you're doing nothing. So then I started just calling stations and building it up on our own. It was crazy.
And then, but how do you get out? You must have had some
got out of the
contract with those guys.
Yeah, when the contract was, I didn't renew it, and then we just started doing. Even so much that we needed to service our show to all the stations. Yeah. So I downloaded schematics for building a multi-CD recorder so that you could record 8 to 1, 1 to 8 rather, the source CD to 8 copies, and I would sit home every Sunday and make 100 copies of my show, 8 at a time, and then send it out, because this is before you could do digital delivery. And that's how I would get my show out to all the stations.
And that was, what year is that? You're sending out CDs of?
Oh, let's see. We started in 99. So I'd say that from 99 to probably 2008, we would deliver on the first couple of years we delivered through satellite. Then that satellite had a decaying orbit, went out of the sky, and we went to CD delivery. And then probably in 2010, we went to digital delivery, and that lasted till I left the show I let it go in 2016 or 2017. So I did it for 19 years.
And then when you let it go, where did it go? Did you give it to somebody, or is it?
No, at that point, we had lost a lot of stations. We were probably down to 20, 25 stations for the last couple of years. It became a hobby that made me a little extra money on the side versus my main job. I started working in restaurants. I started doing other things. It was just a fun side project, as opposed to, for the first 10 years, it was my livelihood. And then after probably 2010, it started to dissipate, because radio wasn't important anymore. It just wasn't. So it didn't matter anymore.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen here, because I have the sponsorship up on Gas Digital. You can see that right now?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. So your sponsors. I want to kind of go through the sponsors and be like, okay, Mike dropped that note.
I would guarantee you that this, unfortunately, is very outdated, but you're more than welcome to go through with this.
Okay, but they all advertised at one point, right?
At one point, yeah.
Okay, so Mike dropped. That's like that's a comedy festival, so that's no surprise. Now something like this, I Trust Capital. How do you get? I mean, it's Legion of Skanks. It's all you guys. It's very, what would you call it? It's
counterculture, maybe. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, it's not. Well, it's not advertiser friendly, and I would think that the hardest thing to get would be like a financial institution.
So what the good news for Gas Digital is that they're not all shows like mine or Legion of Skanks. We have other shows that are more mainstream. So like Part of the Problem, which is a political show with Dave Smith, or Believe You Me with UFC legend Michael Bisping, or there's a wrestling show. These shows are more mainstream, and it's funny. It's like my show may have more listeners than other shows on the network, but my show is not mainstream. So we've come to realize, like, if I could go back in time, I would make a more mainstream show, because I would make more money. But it is more fun to do a ridiculous show. But it is like you have to balance that thing. So a lot of these companies that are the more mainstream companies, your Stamps.coms, your Blue Aprons, or I Trust Capital, or whatever, those are the ones that are going to be on the more left of center shows. But then, like, Quip or Yo Kratom or any of these other companies, they'll be on the whole network.
Oh, they will. Okay, so and the advertisers will express that to you. They say, "Look, I want to come on board, but I don't want to be on the show where the guys come on and dressed in a thong and the racist whatever."
Right,
whatever
exactly.
It is.
Yeah.
Like, what is that thing? Is it a contest to see who can be racist in the
who's
comments?
most justified? That's on Skanks. Yeah, they do that on Skanks.
Okay, so so they'll tell you, like, "Oh, I don't want to be on that show. I want to be on this one."
Yeah. So like you can see here, like if you scroll up a little bit to breathe, to Fume, if you and Yo Kratom and Fume, you just pass them. They have network-wide codes. Like the one with Fume has gas as a code, so that means they're probably on the whole network. If you don't see that, they're probably on a specific show.
What's Kratom? Everywhere I go now, if I'm doing a comedy club or something, I go into the town and I see CBD Kratom everywhere. I don't know what Kratom is.
Kratom it's a legal drug for a little while longer. It definitely is something that makes you a little loopy. There is no there's murky legalities with it right now. It's one just like Delta 8, if you're familiar with it, is a different strain or different chemical compound in weed. So technically it's not illegal in a lot of states. So even though weed's becoming more and more legal. So these are like things that will probably get regulated at some point, but right now they're not.
Yeah. And then Foom, is that another one? Is that like a
Foom is just a cigarette replacement.
Okay, yeah, I get it. And then CBD, that's another one. Quip, I'm surprised. Quip is very because I feel like new technology. That's kind of like a tech. Even though they're a toothbrush company, it's kind of a tech startup because it's. I don't know. It just seems like a tech startup to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see them online and you order. I actually have a subscription to Quip. Mm-hmm. Because they send you a new toothbrush every 3 months,
right.
And it's just easy, and they're great travel toothbrushes. So I have them, but they're not worried about anything.
They were just on. I think they were on Part of the Problem, which is a very mainstream podcast.
Okay, so they're not totally store wide, Okay, so and then you got Keeps. Okay, that's you see that Stamps.com. They're on a lot of different podcasts. So how did you? Then, you know what? I had a question that I filed in my head back when you were talking about radio. If you want to advertise just on the radio, right?
Now or back then?
Well, I guess back then, like the advertisers, I would hear radio ads and I'd be like, wow, that carpet store has enough money to advertise. Like, what's the cheapest you can get an ad on the radio? I mean, it's probably pretty cheap for
very
small
cheap.
stations.
So here's the thing that's weird is like, it's kind of the same with podcasting in that you can do a network-wide ad, right, for the whole network. It's going to cost you a fortune.
Yeah.
But the CPM rate, not to be condescending to the listeners, but cost per thousand, M being the Roman numeral for 1,000, is going to be very low. But if because you're taking the whole network and you're putting a large chunk of money down, that CPM rate or the cost per 1,000 listeners drops dramatically. Yeah. If you just want one episode of one show, your CPM rate's going to be enormous, but you don't have to drop a fortune with a 6-month commitment, so that's the balancing act. So when you're doing radio, the local pizza shop might have bought 2 ads, but their rate is going to be way higher than Geico, who's taking a 6-month commitment and running 40 ads a week. So it's just about your commitment per run versus the ad itself. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, that's definitely... It makes sense to me. I was surprised because Gutfeld, when we do the live shows, he has taken out ads promoting his show during Fox News only locally. So if we're playing Texas, he'll buy a cable buy, and it'll say, nobody knows the difference. They're watching Fox News, and then they might be watching Gutfeld, and then the commercial break comes, and it's an ad for Gutfeld, and they don't know that Greg bought the ad himself locally, and it was super cheap. I mean, it was in the hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, when I used to be a nightclub promoter, like first like trendy nightclubs and then rock clubs back in the day when I was in my early 20s. And we would take that. Remember, we did an ad once. We did a show once with the first season of the show, The Real World. Remember the show, The Real World? I don't think it exists anymore. One of the guys was in a band, and he performed at Limelight, which is a rock club in New York. I was a DJ there and a promoter. And he played, and they were like, "Oh my God, this guy's in a band! Like, we got to get him at our club," because I was a DJ and a promoter there, but I ran a club in Brooklyn. So I talked to his manager, and they didn't realize the value of this good-looking dude being on Real World. So we booked him. I think it was $500. We booked them, right? And then we just ran ads during the Real World, only in Brooklyn and the surrounding areas. I think we spent $1,000 for like 5 ads. Might have even been more ads. I don't remember. But just in the Brooklyn, New York area. And we had like 2,000 people show up. It was crazy. So people don't realize it's still to this day, like, I can't run ads on because my podcast is fucking so offensive. I can't call a show Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll and run an ad on a TV show. But the other side of it is I don't think if you're still watching broadcast television, you probably don't listen to podcasts because they're polar opposites in the tech world. So I don't know how well a podcast ad would do on local television. But for an event, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. And so that's the thing is, so you figured out how to do all this stuff. And I think it's kind of all out there. But, that was you. The reason I think I didn't know. I was like, how did Gas Digital do it? How did those guys that seem like they're just a bunch of lunkheads, how did they create this network that is totally legit? Like you have major meetings with advertisers and you guys make a lot of money, right?
We do all right. Yeah, I would say from 2016 to 2022, we had year over year phenomenal gains. 2023 was a little harder just because the landscape has changed a lot in terms of, I don't think podcasting is the ad media darling that it used to be. Now it's much more for social media, much more for that landscape. It's not as much as podcasting. Even across the board, podcasting ad sales dollars are down. It is what it is.
Why? They just don't want to spend. They don't see the returns.
I think they see the value. I just think that they're going more for the micro influencer on TikTok or on Instagram. That's where their dollars are going, or they're going back to traditional media. I don't know exactly. I can just tell you across the board, I have friends with a lot of network owners, that are in this landscape. A lot of the networks I used to know, they're all gone. They went out of business, so it's just because advertising in podcasting has dropped. I think it will come back because the ROI on podcasting is pretty high because of the connection I think a user has with their audience, more so than in almost any other platform, certainly more than a billboard or a TV ad. So I think that it will come back. It just was so exponentially higher and higher every year that now it's starting to, I wouldn't say level off or just decline a little bit.
Yeah. What's the best kind of thing? It seems like there's a lot of supplements, and that would be very lucrative, right? Because I think people taking powders or pills or
well, it's all about the best platform. The best things for podcasting, I think, are something under $100, but something high enough that you don't need to sell thousands of them to make the podcast, the advertiser happy. I think that's why a recurring subscription somewhere is great. But the weird thing is that we've learned from running the network, because you have discount codes to subscribe to the network, and maybe 25% of our subscribers use discount codes. So it just tells me universally that people don't really use discount codes. Because if they did, we'd have a much higher percentage, because the only way you know about Gas Digital is because you heard it on a podcast promoting Gas Digital.
Yeah.
So you would think, because we don't spend any money on advertising. The podcasts advertise the network, So you would think that our coupon rate would be crazy high, just because of the fact that you don't have, the only way you know about us is because of the podcast that you're listening to, but it's only about 25%. So that tells me most people don't use fucking coupon codes.
So do you think they go to the site, they'll go get a quip, and they won't use your thing?
They won't use the code. Yeah, that's what I think.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because I'll search for code. I'm not going to buy
I use
any
Honey.
of that
I'm
code.
sure I use Honey. Honey's plugged into my fucking browser, and it just finds codes. I don't think about it. That's I think that's what most people do these days.
Speaking of plugged into the browser, maybe you know the answer to this. My wife and I were just talking about it last night. We got a flat tire, or it was the pressure was way down, so it was a slow leak because there was a there was a puncture in the tire.
Mm-hmm.
We repaired it. And we paid cash. We went to a mobile station and we paid cash. And now the next day, ads for pumping up tires and, all these products that you can pump your tire up and everything appearing on both of our Instagram feeds and everything else. We didn't do anything. How do they know what's going on? Are they listening to the phone?
I think that was just a wild coincidence, because I'm seeing that ad everywhere as well. And I don't even have a car.
Okay.
So,
like the machine that pumps up your tire, you're saying?
Yeah, I've seen that a million times. They're spending a fortune. It's like a little, like the size of a phone, but a little thicker, and it pumps up your tires. I haven't had a car in 20 years, and I'm seeing that ad every time I log in. So I think that one is just a coincidence. But I've seen, a lot. We all think that it listens to us 24/7, because you talk it like the one that freaked me out more than anything was, I was talking on the phone about a band to a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a fucking very unknown band. They had one minor hit. I don't follow them on Instagram. We were on the phone. I was talking to him, and I was on my home line. So I used to have a home phone. It was a few years ago. And an hour later, that band liked one of my posts. So they don't follow me. I don't follow them. I
Yeah.
haven't thought about them in 10 years. I mentioned them, and that day they like one of my posts, which tells me Instagram was showing them my posts
Yeah.
because it heard me mention them. That's
Yeah.
the only logical answer, because it's not like it's a band. If it was a band I was following, that doesn't make it, then fine. Or a band that follows me, fine. But not a band that I hadn't thought of in a fucking decade. And they
And you
like
didn't
one
play
of my
their
posts?
music. You didn't say, "Oh, I
Nope.
want to also hear them." And
Nope, nothing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay. I don't know if my wife's going to believe you with the pump thing because
Yeah,
it both
I'm
came
seeing
up.
it all the fucking time.
Yeah,
All
I'm
the
going to tell
time.
her that. So
Yeah.
we'll see what that is. One of the ones that, like I couldn't figure it out, that I was getting bombarded with ads for a down coat like that, Northern whatever it is. It's like a certain down
North
coat.
Face or whatever it is.
It wasn't North Face. It was that one that was like from, one of the Nordic countries or something, And I didn't look at them. I didn't take a picture of it. But I was kind of seeing it around, and then I saw all the ads, really bombarded with it. And then I realized I was watching a detective show that all the detectives had that code in it. And it's in my Netflix queue, and I think Netflix is on the phone and it's connected. So I think Netflix shares what you watch with them.
I wouldn't doubt it in a million years.
Yeah.
I also think it's crazy that we haven't had the technology yet where if you're watching a show on Netflix or anything, you should be able to pause the screen, tap on the jacket, and it tells you where to buy it.
Yeah.
It's wild that doesn't exist.
I know. I think they even in the early days, like Web TV by Microsoft, tried that, and it was just annoying. And okay, so this is what we're going to close with, your kind of lifestyle, because I saw the video. Tim Dillon was like making fun of you because you run a lot and he doesn't care, or like that was an old video, but
it was an old video from a couple of years ago. But
yeah. But so you were Limelight, strip clubs. You were in the world of. I bet you're probably abusing yourself with food and drink and just were not living healthily for many years, I'm assuming. And at some point you turned it over, and now you're like, are you like a health nut, or you just run? What is it?
Well, the funny thing is growing up in the rock and roll world of running nightclubs and rock clubs and strip clubs and everything like that, I never did drugs. I barely drank, and I ate relatively healthy, which is pretty wild,
Yeah.
But about 7-8 years ago, my father died. I got depressed. I gained over 100 and something pounds. I never knew what my maximum density was because after I'm 6'6", I'm a big dude, 6'5", 6'6", and so I'm normally about 240. But after 320, 325, I stopped looking at the scale because it was too fucking depressing. And then COVID hit, and I gained even more weight because we were all baking bread like schmucks and doing whatever we thought was funny, making desserts. So I gained even more weight. And then I remember one day I ate a whole pizza, a large pizza, a whole pint of ice cream. And then a friend of mine invited me to dinner. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll go to dinner. And I went and ate a whole dinner. And then a bunch of SDR fans and Gas Digital people were DMing or making fun of a video of mine that had come out, calling me a fat fuck. And, you look disgusting. Ralph's going to die any day now, whatever. And I was like, I got to fucking change this. And it was May of 2020 where I was like, I need to make a fucking change. So I just started running, and I never run a day in my life. I was 50 at the time, and I could not run a block. I was so out of shape.
Yeah.
And so I made a deal with myself that I would run every other day, no matter what, following this app called Couch to a 5K, which is about a 10-week program. Had to restart weeks every couple of times because it was so fucking exhausting. But I ran through rain, through snow, through 105-degree weather, through negative 10-degree weather, to where one time my water bottle froze over and I still fucking running like crazy. And then 5K to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. And eventually I ran my first half marathon in March of 2022. It took me 2 years to get to that point. And then I thought, well, this would be fun. What if I ran half marathons around the world? So that's what I did for the year of 2020. From the middle of 2022 to the middle of 2023, I ran 8 half marathons in different cities and countries around the world just for a crazy thing.
Yeah.
And I did it with Ireland, Iceland, Barcelona, Hawaii, Miami, New York, and I'm probably forgetting one or two. And just did that, and I've lost almost 100 pounds. I jokingly put out this book because all these people were asking me, how did you lose all this weight? Did you do keto? Are you intermittent fasting? Are you this? Are you that? And I can say I'm a best-selling author. I put this book out as a joke, and it hit number 33 in Amazon under health and wellness. And it's called the 100% Guaranteed Guide to Weight Loss and Fitness by Ralph Sutton. And it's 200 pages. The first page says, Chapter 1, Eat Less. Second page is Chapter 2, Work Out More. And then the rest of the book is blank. And I sold thousands of them. I hit top 50.
That's it?
I stand by it. I said to people, if you follow that and it doesn't work, I will give you your money back.
That's unbelievable. But you know what's interesting is you kept going longer and longer, right? But then you got to the half. So it always seems like I don't run long distance. I was running a mile a day during COVID. I was just like, I got to do a mile every day. And but the secret to my longevity is that I never do more than a mile because it drives me crazy. If I'm out there running 5 miles, it not only does it beat on my hips and my knees, it's boring to me. And then I'm not going to run the next day. And it's like, so I often tell people, don't increase, but you did the increase.
Yeah, I think it depends. Like I listen to educational podcasts when I run or entertaining books, one or the other, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm improving my body and my mind at the same time, right? That's number one. Number two, I fucking hated running. I never ran. I thought it was the most boring thing in the world. But there is a tranquility of your phone being off and you being just with you and nobody else. There is something magical about that, right? And you're only competing against yourself. There's only metrics that matter against yourself. And also, I helped build this company here in New York called Juice Press, which was a raw vegan company, even though I'm not raw vegan. But
I remember that. Yeah, I remember Juice Press.
I helped build that company from 3 stores to about 90. And I was there from 3 stores to about 30 something, and then I quit. But now that owner and we opened up a new store called Good Sugar, and that's on 3rd Avenue, 69th Street. And that's vegan as well, with a socially conscious footprint with no single-use plastics, blah, blah, blah. But we also started a podcast on health and wellness together that also documented my changes. And I try every stupid thing that you hear about: cold plunging, stretching, IVs, whatever the fuck it is. I will try it, and then I report back to the listeners how I felt. Yes, it's anecdotal, but I'm trying it out to see, you know?
No, I like it. You know, this is the thing. When people say like, oh, well, that's not, that's anecdotal. You have to do the controlled trial. I think controlled trial is all lies, and anecdotal is the only way. Because it's real.
We're all wired differently. We're all wired differently, too. What works for me, even in a controlled trial, you never fucking know. Just go do it and see what happens. And I tried where they make you shit for 40 minutes. A colonic. That was weird. You know, I did that. I tried all these different things that are supposed to have health benefits. I'll just go try it. You know, who the fuck cares? I go try it.
Well, stretching you still do, right?
Yeah. Yoga I do. Meditation I do. A bunch of different supplements that I felt made a difference I do.
What do you do? What's your top? Give me 2 supplements.
Shilajit, for sure. It's disgusting, but it definitely I felt a difference with it.
Shilajit.
Yeah. SHILJAT.
Yeah.
It's disgusting, but I can say it's hard to quantify what is the miracle that worked for me, you know?
Yeah.
Because when you're doing, like, when I remember talking with my doctor about it, it's like my testosterone went up, my energy went up, and all this other stuff. He goes, yeah. Or it could have been timing with losing weight, running more, eating better. Who the fuck knows?
I know.
But
yeah.
I do know that I felt a difference, so I kept doing it. And it's disgusting. It looks like tar. But,
but what do you do? You mix it into something and drink it?
I just take it. It tastes like shit. I just put a little bit in my mouth and eat it. Who gives a fuck, you know?
Cod liver oil? Do you do cod liver oil?
No, I don't do cod liver oil. I do apple cider vinegar. I do collagen.
Okay, wait. Collagen I take in my coffee now. It's that product. I heard about it on a podcast. It's the Phil Mickelson thing. It's called The Good Stuff.
Oh, mine is just powdered collagen. I just put it in my... I also... this is the one I really believe in. You ready for this?
Yeah.
I grow my own sprouts. Okay? It's very easy to do. I know it sounds ridiculous. You don't need soil. You don't need sunshine. It takes like 3 or 4 days, and you grow sprouts. So here's the logic behind it. When you eat broccoli, I'll just use that as an example because every vegetable will sprout, you know?
Yeah.
It takes about 3 days, 4 days. When you eat broccoli, you're eating the flower, basically the top of the vegetable.
Yeah.
You're not eating the stem. You're not eating the root. And if you eat the sprout, you're eating the entire thing, right? So you're getting a far more nutrients in a far more bioavailable format to your body. And what I can say is when I'm eating sprouts every day, just a handful of them every morning, right? I went 2.5 years without getting sick once. Anytime I've skipped them in the past year for various reasons, like I'm traveling or I forgot to do it one day or whatever, I ended up getting sick. So I can just say for me, it's 100% worked.
A sprout, what is a sprout? I mean,
it looks like they look like alfalfa sprouts. You've seen those.
Okay,
right?
alfalfa. But you're saying it doesn't matter what the sprout is?
I use broccoli and pea, but there's different ones that have different properties that are better for, like, wheat is better supposedly for hair loss, and broccoli is better for vitamin C and D or whatever the fuck, I forget what it is. But some of them have, like the lentil sprouts have protein in it, but it depends on where you feel your deficiency is. And what I did was I tested a few different ones because they're easy to fucking grow. And the
but
ones
no
that
dirt. What do? You don't grow no dirt?
It's in a jar, and you just fill it with water, fill it with water, let it sit for 24 hours. Then every day for 3 days, you just fill it up with water, spill it out, fill it with water, spill it out. And within 3 or 4 days, it sprouts, it grows. And I've seen a big difference for me, for sure.
All right. Sprouts, that's good.
Yeah, and I've actually talked probably, 20, 30 people into doing it, and they all say they feel better.
Wow. And you got the jars. Where are the jars? Like,
they're sitting in my kitchen.
Or?
You don't need sunlight. You don't need, to me also, by the way, it's so fucking cheap. You buy a bag of broccoli seeds, it's like $10, and it will last you like 2 years.
Yeah.
And they don't go bad. Seeds don't go bad. There's stories of people finding heirloom tomato seeds from 100 years ago, and they'll still bloom. It's wild, right? But they are cheap, they are nourishing, and they are filling. For parts of the world that are starved for food, if they just have access to water, they can fill up on fucking sprouts. It's wild.
But you don't have to grow them yourself. You could buy sprouts, right, at like Whole Foods.
Expensive. Yeah, but it's much more expensive. Yeah, and
right.
it's so cheap, and it literally is 3 days. And I just have a turnover where I take them out, I put in new ones, and every 3 or 4 days, it's just part of my life.
And then you just take them, stick them in your mouth.
Take a handful of it every day. That's what I do. Some eat more, but I just start my day with a big handful of sprouts. It's ridiculous, I know, but I'm telling you.
No, I like it. I never heard this, and so I'm gonna look into that. Ralph Sutton, this was great conversation. I mean, I feel like there's like many other subjects I didn't get to, but maybe we'll do it on another time or something like that.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me, man.
Thank you. And, Legion of Skanks, and then...
follow me everywhere at I Am Ralph Sutton, my podcast, The SDR Show.
Yeah.
We get
you're
really
huge, but you
guests.
don't even have that many, like, I saw you on Twitter. There's not many followers on Twitter.
I don't fucking give a shit about social media. I just don't. Like, I don't post on Twitter. I really barely post on Instagram. I'm an old guy that doesn't give a fuck about social media. I just don't care.
But you don't need it because you've got all the listeners, right? And
so I mean, I wish, would it be nice to have a couple 100,000 followers? Sure, but I just don't fucking care. Like, if it means I have to do this, what's up, everybody? I'm not doing it. It's not happening.
It's tiresome, but all right, Ralph Sutton, thanks so much, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, see you again.